You ever wake up in the middle of the night and feel like your life is a house of glass? One tap, one careless footstep, and the whole thing might just fracture. That's how it started for me, not with a revelation so much as a feeling, a small itch behind my ribs that I couldn't swat away. My name is Mia. I'm 31, freelance graphic designer, city apartment with a balcony that catches the last sun of the day. I like my coffee strong, my playlists short, and my plants alive mostly. Isaac, my boyfriend of 3 years, liked IKEA lamps, Sunday football, and calling me babe in his office Slack like he hadn't heard it 200 times before. He was funny in the small ways, the kind of small that fits into life like a mug into a cupboard. Practical, nice, comfortable. He was the person you take home to meet your parents because he seems safe. So when the itch started, I ignored it. That's the thing about living with someone, you become an expert at rationalizing. You interpret silence as tiredness, texts as group chats, late nights as deadlines. You tell yourself love is trust, and trust means you don't pry in the corners where shadows gather, but shadows gather regardless. It began with small things: a lipstick on the collar of his shirt that didn't match mine, a faint perfume note in the apartment at 2 a.m. when I was sure I'd locked the door, a screenshot that blinked across his laptop while he pretended to be rushing to his meeting, a face I didn't recognize for a half second before the window disappeared. I told myself to breathe. I told myself I was being petty. I tucked the unease into the compartment I labeled night anxiety and tried to sleep. 2 weeks later, the itch became a throb. Isaac started being protective of his phone. Not normal, I'm tired protective, but a guardedness that looked like guilt wearing a suit. He would slide it face down at the table. He'd take calls in another room. Small whispers of secrecy became louder because they were constant. I tried to talk. I asked if his job was stressful. He said yes. I asked if something was wrong. He said no. He kissed my forehead with that half smile that used to feel like home, and for a blink I believed it. Belief is addictive. It's the easiest sedative, but I'm not reckless. I'm not dramatic. I am someone who reads contracts for a living, who knows how details hide in margins. So curiosity did what curiosity does, it collected data. I won't pretend it was heroic. I opened his laptop once when he'd taken a long shower and left his browser unlocked. It was a quick peek for sanity. I found nothing obvious, just a slew of harmless tabs. But then I scrolled back through his messaging app, the one he used for casual friends and work. In the middle of coffee memes and spreadsheet jokes, there it was. A name, L, and a string of messages that made my chest hollow out. Not explicit, not obscene, but intimate in the way language becomes when it's being used to build a bridge between two people who aren't supposed to be building bridges. Words like miss, wish I was there, you being close, and then later a photo. My breath stopped reading a photo I'd never seen but somehow knew the significance of. It was a dim bar, a hand on a hip, a laugh. The timestamp, 2 months ago. The location, a neighborhood I knew Isaac hadn't been to for work. I closed the laptop and stood there in the kitchen, listening to the apartment soundproof itself around me. The itch had sharpened into an ache. I confronted him, eventually. There's a moment before accusing someone where your voice trembles from trying things on. I wanted to say, "Who is L?" Like it was light, like it would be a laughable thing. But fear turns words into small knives that barely cut. "Is there someone else?" I asked instead, because bluntness sometimes saves time. For a beat he looked at me like I'd said the wrong word in a language he'd been pretending to speak. Then he smiled that practiced smile and said, "No, of course not. Where's this coming from, Mia?" The answer should have been obvious. The silence, the small things, the sudden new interests, but I heard him. I wanted to believe him. Maybe I wanted the safest story so badly I was willing to live inside the lie. He asked me to trust him. I wanted to, so I did for a week, for 2. But trust is inventory, it runs out. Repeat offenses are how patterns become proof. There were signs I could no longer afford to ignore. A lipstick on a collar, a lingering scent in the jacket he left at my place, a caller ID that would change from work Isaac to unknown at midnight. Every time I asked, he deflected. He started saying the words that make cheaters feel less guilty. It was nothing. I was lonely that night. It was a mistake. I don't believe mistakes often, I believe patterns. One night, in the quiet between 1 and 3 a.m., I made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff with my eyes open. I would collect evidence. Not to humiliate, not to punish, not to be cruel, though those things would come, but to anchor myself to the truth. To know absolutely whether my home was built on honesty or on smoke. The math of proof is simple. Screenshots, dates, receipts, messages, photos, cross-references. A trail of breadcrumbs that, when lined up, tells a story that throat-tight nerves cannot deny. I started small. I saved messages from threads where L appeared. I made copies of photos and timestamps. I matched timestamps to locations he claimed. It turned out he'd said he was at an all-night work sprint, but GPS data from a third-party app we both used showed him at a bar, the same one in the photo. I found receipts for cocktails and names that weren't ours. Little toilet paper-thin things that proved an enormous weight. Then came the discovery that changed the geometry of everything: his email. I'd only ever seen Isaac's email in the context of invoices and apartment maintenance. I never had reason to connect to it. But I found a thread hidden behind a label between him and L. The subject line was mundane. The content was not. There were plans referenced, weekend meetups, coy jokes that turned fragile in daylight. In one message, a line read, "I know it's wrong, but it feels like someone sees me." He signed it with a name I shouted at the top of my lungs inside my head. Isaac. He had been seeing her, and she had been seeing him. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I sat on the edge of our bed and cataloged the details like a forensic scientist who also happened to be human. It was weirdly methodical: the dates, the locations, the times they overlapped with the calendar months we'd booked as us. I made folders on my laptop titled Proof and Timeline. I labeled everything. Organizing made the chaos readable. The next morning I acted as if everything was normal. I made coffee. I kissed him goodbye. He left humming a song we both knew. He was casual. He did not suspect that I had his life saved in neat folders. We went through the week. I acted like nothing had happened while I built an archive of it all. I don't know whether the compulsion to archive is vindictive or survivalist. Maybe both. Maybe it's the only way to keep your edges from blurring into the person they betrayed. Collecting proof felt monstrous at times. I worried I was becoming the kind of person who lives for confirmation instead of reconciliation. But the archive gave me a strange steadiness. It kept me anchored to the fact that I was not crazy. It kept me from being gaslit by my own softness. There are moments where logic must be tempered by strategy. I didn't want a private fight that would go nowhere. I didn't want a whispered apology that would dissolve like sugar in coffee. I wanted the kind of clarity that moves the social needle, undeniable evidence in the public square. So I crafted a plan that felt both surgical and theatrical. I would confront him not in a fit of rage but in a way that forced truth into daylight. Then I would post the evidence online. Not to ruin him for the sake of ruin, but because public accountability sometimes accelerates moral consequences where private conversation stalls. If he wanted to claim it was a mistake from loneliness, fine, let the world hear the full sentence and judge. If he wanted forgiveness, it would be offered with eyes open. The choice to go public is a heavy one. It feels like stripping a person down and asking the internet to adjudicate your pain. But there's power in transparency. There's a kind of democracy in letting others see what you saw and decide for themselves. Plus, in an age where social capital is currency, the optics matter. Shame, warranted or not, moves things. That is a tool, and tools are morally neutral until you pick them up. I spent the weekend refining the folder. I blurred some faces, only to protect the innocent who had nothing to do with this. I organized the photos in chronological order. I combined receipts, GPS coordinates, screenshots of messages, and the email thread into a single, downloadable file. I wrote a short statement, clear, level-headed, not verbose. I am posting this because I want the truth in the open. I do not want to humiliate, but I need to be seen. If you have been through this, you know why. I rehearsed what I would say in the confrontation. Confrontation is like theater, stage direction matters. I would not yell, I would not throw things. I would place the evidence on the table and watch the person I loved explain it away. I wanted to give him the chance to tell the truth. That was an act of generosity I gave myself so I could say later that I had tried everything. And then I waited. The waiting is worse than the acting because it forces you to live inside the tension. Everyday things became loaded. The way he hummed while washing dishes, the way he read the sports news, the way his exhale sounded in sleep. I tried to carry on, which is what you do when you are both terrified and resolute. When the day came, I felt like someone stepping into cold water. My palms were damp, my voice steady in a way that felt contrived. He met me at the kitchen island like he'd always met me, with the casual confidence of a man who assumes explanations are negotiable. I put the laptop on the table. I slid the folder across. I didn't say anything for a moment. I let the machine hum. He looked at the screen, then at me, and for a second I thought his eyes would go wide and he would fall apart. Instead, he tightened his lips and folded his arms like a man bracing for an interview. "Where did you get that?" he asked low. "I collected it," I said. "From your devices, from places you didn't expect me to look, from a reality you were trying to keep private." He swallowed. "This is private," he started. "Private," I repeated. "For whom?" He took one step forward, a plea forming. "It was a mistake, it was loneliness. It happened when we were distant. I wasn't thinking, I never meant to hurt you." And there it was. The classic line that tries to render betrayal into a forgivable human lapse. Loneliness as an excuse, mistake as absolution. The words were old and soft and designed to make you fold. I'd heard the rehearsal of "I'm sorry" before. I'd read about it, I'd watched it on television, I'd once believed it. This time the evidence sat between us like a witness that could not be bullied. "You call it loneliness," I said, calm but sharp, "but you chose to cross a line. A mistake is a misstep. This is a pattern. You built choices that made me the last to know." His expression flickered, something between anger, shame, and the panic of being caught without an exit strategy. He wasn't furious that he had done it, he was furious that I had proof. "Do you want me to lie?" he asked finally, voice rising just enough to sound hurt. "Do you want me to pretend this meant nothing to me? I told you I was lonely." Lonely. He said it like it was a diagnosis instead of a decision. "You were lonely," I said slowly, "while you were sleeping next to me, while I was cooking for you. While I was sending you good luck messages at work, while we were talking about moving in together." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. "Mia, you don't get it. I made one mistake and I didn't know how to fix it afterward. I panicked." "More than once," I replied coolly, pointing to the messages. He opened his mouth, closed it. Then he grabbed the laptop, scrolling with the speed of someone desperately looking for loopholes in a contract they'd already signed blindly. He clicked the photos, the screenshots, the receipts. Every click was an impact. A punch he couldn't dodge, a reality he couldn't rewrite. When he hit the bar photo, the one with the dim lights and the way his hand cupped her hip, his face drained of color, that photo was louder than every message combined. "Mia, he paused, his voice thinned. "I didn't think you'd ever see that." That was the truth, not that he was sorry, not that he regretted it, just that he didn't think he'd get caught. He reached for my hand like he'd earned closeness, like the moment could be patched with skin contact. I stepped back. "We can fix this," he pleaded. "Please don't throw this away over one mistake." "It wasn't one," I repeated. "It was 2 months, multiple dates, multiple lines crossed, multiple choices. I'm not throwing something away, I'm recognizing what you already broke." He stared at me like the ground had shifted. Then quietly, so quietly I almost missed it, he whispered, "I didn't want to lose you." And for a split second, something inside me trembled. Because that sentence wasn't a lie. He didn't want to lose me. What he wanted was both me and the comfort of someone else's novelty. It wasn't love, it was possession. "You should have thought about that," I said, "before you made sure someone else didn't lose you either." His face twisted, not in anger, but in the realization that the lines he walked had finally intersected. He followed me around the apartment for nearly half an hour afterward, every sentence a new angle of apology. It was emotional, not physical. I was confused. She meant nothing. "I love you, you're overreacting. I didn't know how to stop it. You're the one I want. I'm sorry, talk to me, please." But the thing about apologies is that they aren't band-aids. They're mirrors, and he didn't like what he saw reflected back. When he finally ran out of words, I held up a hand. "I'm posting it," I said. He froze. "What?" "I'm posting the evidence, the truth, not out of cruelty. Out of clarity." He blinked fast. "Mia, no, don't, you can't, this will ruin me." "Ruin you?" I asked quietly. "You ruined you, I'm just removing the curtains." "You're angry," he said desperately. "You're not thinking straight. People will judge me, they'll say things, he swallowed. "They'll talk about us. There is no us anymore." His face cracked the way glass does before shattering. "Mia, please, I made a mistake, I was lonely. I didn't feel connected to you lately. We were drifting apart and I was scared. There it was again, loneliness weaponized like a shield. Then you talk, I said, you communicate. You don't crawl into someone else's bed and then come back into mine. He covered his face with his hands. This isn't fair, fair. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how absurd it was to hear the word fair from the man who had been lying beside me while texting another woman goodnight. You didn't choose fairness, I said. You chose comfort. He tried one more time, his voice quieter, like he had accepted that truth was no longer negotiable. Mia, if you post this, people will see a version of me that's not all of me. That's the version you showed me, I replied. Silence fell, the heavy kind that settles in your bones. He lowered into a chair, defeated, and stared at the folder like it was a bomb he'd accidentally built. I turned away because watching someone break apart is not satisfying. It's simply necessary when it gives you back the parts of yourself they stole. I walked into the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed where I had once felt safe, and where he had written the first lines of betrayal. Then I opened my laptop. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because secrets rot in darkness and truth disinfects. I posted it anonymously, a thread, a story, the proof. Every screenshot, every receipt, every timestamp, blurred faces of innocent bystanders. Nothing cruel added, nothing exaggerated, nothing unnecessary. The title was simple: My Boyfriend Cheated. Here's the full timeline he denied. Within 30 minutes, it had dozens of comments, then hundreds, then thousands. Some people shared their own experiences, some expressed rage on my behalf, some dissected his excuses like surgeons. Some just said, I'm proud of you for leaving. People saw the timeline clearly, people saw the patterns, people saw the lies, and most importantly, people validated the truth. I didn't expect validation to feel like oxygen, but it did. For the first time in months, I didn't feel crazy, I didn't feel invisible, I didn't feel small, I felt seen. When I walked back into the living room, he was sitting on the floor, staring at his phone. His face was pale. He had seen it, or maybe someone sent it to him. Maybe one of his friends recognized the receipts or the bar photo. Maybe he recognized the shape of his own betrayal in a stranger's story. He looked up at me, devastation written across every inch of him. You posted it, he whispered. Yes, I said. What do I do now? He asked. That, I replied, is not my problem anymore. His voice cracked. Do you hate me? No, I said honestly. If I hated you, I'd still be emotionally attached. I'm not. He left that night. He packed in silence. He didn't slam the door. He didn't fight. He just walked out with the weight of the truth on his shoulders. And I didn't cry, not once, because grief needs hope to exist, and hope died before he ever confessed. I turned off the lights, sat on the couch, and realized something quietly beautiful. I had chosen myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally coming home. The morning after he left, the apartment felt impossibly quiet. Not peaceful, just emptied out, the way a room sounds after a concert, faint echoes of something that used to be loud. His toothbrush was still in the cup. His jacket still hung on the hook, but the person who claimed them was gone, and the air felt different because of it. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen island, and opened my laptop. The thread was still climbing. Dozens of new comments poured in every minute. I didn't read them all, I couldn't. Some brought a strange warmth to my chest, others stung in ways I didn't expect. People dissecting your life is an odd experience. They don't know you, not really, but they see the version you put out there. The truthful version, the unpolished, untreated wound. I clicked off after 10 minutes, deciding that too much truth, even your own, can crowd your breathing. Around noon, a friend texted me, please tell me that post isn't about Isaac. I stared at the message for a long second before typing back, it is. And then, I'm okay. Both were true and neither were easy. My friend asked if she should come over. I said no. I needed space, not to think, but to let the fallout settle. Sometimes the quiet after a storm is more important than company. You need to sit inside the wreckage and realize you're still standing. Isaac tried calling once. I let it ring. He didn't try again. That evening, I went for a walk, a long, slow one through the neighborhood where we'd shared years. Everything looked the same. Couples laughing over takeout, kids running on scooters, porch lights clicking on one by one. Life didn't pause just because mine had shifted. And that was grounding in its own strange way. When I came back home, I did something small but symbolic. I pulled down the framed photo of us from the hallway shelf. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't smash it or throw it out the window. I just placed it gently into a drawer. Removing it was not deleting the past, it was making room for the future. I spent the night cleaning, not obsessively, not violently, just reclaiming space. His laundry went into a bag, his shoes were lined up near the door. His coffee mug, the one he used every morning, I placed carefully on the counter. I didn't know why. Maybe closure sometimes looks like acknowledging that someone existed here without feeling obligated to keep them. By midnight, the apartment looked the same but felt entirely mine. 2 days passed before I heard from him again. A long message, paragraphs and paragraphs, apologies, explanations, self-flagellation, the whole emotional manifesto of a man trying to rewrite the ending. He said he was deeply ashamed. He said he lost control. He said he never meant to fall into something. He said he felt seen by someone else because he felt invisible at home. It was that last line that made something inside me go quiet. Invisible? I had been the one checking on him, asking if he was okay, supporting him through layoffs, through family problems, through his spiral with burnout. He wasn't invisible. He was ungrateful. I didn't reply. He tried again the next day, shorter this time, softer, like someone knocking on a door that they already know won't open. I didn't reply then either. The silence became my boundary. But online, the story was still alive. The post traveled further than I planned, screenshots shared on forums, reaction videos, people DMing me their own heartbreak sagas. I had unleashed something communal. Strange thing. Betrayal is lonely in private but universal in public. People saw themselves in my timeline. They found their own grief in my receipts. They found courage in my documentation. And I found something unexpected in them, relief. Not validation, I had that already. Not righteousness, that wasn't the goal. But relief that the truth was no longer locked inside me. Truth wants an audience, not for applause, but for air. A week later, my sister insisted I join her for brunch. I resisted, but she has a stubborn jawline and the emotional persistence of a Labrador. We sat on a patio overlooking the street. The sun was warm, the pancakes were good, and she looked at me with that older sister scan that sees through everything. "You seem steady," she said finally. "I am," I replied. "You're not angry?" No, anger had burned off quickly like alcohol on a hot pan. What was left was clarity. "He said he was lonely," I added after a while. She snorted. "People don't cheat because they're lonely. People cheat because they're cowards." I laughed, the first real laugh in days. "Maybe," I said. "Either way, it's not my problem now." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you." It wasn't pride I felt, though. It was something quieter, sturdier, self-respect. That night, Isaac sent one final message. "I'm sorry, I know I've lost you. I know I deserve the fallout. But for what it's worth, I did love you. I was just stupid." For a moment, I felt the old grief bubble up, the version of him I loved, the future I imagined, the nights we planned, the mornings we shared. Human beings are complicated. People who hurt you can still mean something, but meaning is not a reason to stay. I typed back 4 words, "I hope you heal." And I meant it. "Healing doesn't mean reconciling, it means releasing." He replied only once. "Goodbye, Mia." I didn't respond. And just like that, the last loose thread tied itself. In the weeks that followed, I learned how to live alone again. I took long showers without thinking of time. I bought a new plant for the balcony. I moved the furniture slightly, not a full makeover, just a shift. I slept diagonally on the bed. I started eating earlier. I played music louder. Small things. But small things accumulate the same way small lies accumulate, except these were gentle. These rebuilt me. The truth is, heartbreak doesn't hit all at once. It arrives like waves. But waves recede. Sometimes I would remember a good moment, a road trip, a movie night, his hand on my back, and I'd feel a soft ache. But it wasn't longing, it was acceptance. That happened, it's over, I'm better for knowing the truth. What surprised me most was how fast self-respect fills the space where doubt once lived. When you stop asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" the question dissolves. Because the answer is simple, someone else's choices are not your deficit. 3 weeks later, I opened the drawer where I'd placed the framed photo. I looked at it for a long moment. The smiles were real, the memories were real, but so was the betrayal. I put the frame back not out of pain, but because the past has its place and its place is not center stage. Behind me, the late afternoon sun stretched across the living room floor. Dust floated in the light like tiny reminders that the world continues always. I made tea. I sat on the couch. I wrapped a blanket around my legs and let myself breathe. Not survive, not rebuild, not analyze, just breathe, because betrayal breaks you in sharp ways, yes. But it also clears space in your life for something better than fear disguised as love. I didn't know what was coming next for me, a new love, a new life, a new version of myself. It didn't matter. The ending of something false is the beginning of something true. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something warm settle in my chest. Hope, not the naive kind, not the fragile kind, the grounded kind, the kind you grow yourself. The kind that feels like coming home to you.